So I'm going to talk a bit about the Sally Clark case, and then I'm going to move on to talking a bit about Dr Marnerides, who's one of the lesser talked about experts in the Lucy Letby prosecution. The Sally Clark case happened in 1999. Around that time there were a cluster of prosecutions, ironically. There were a number of prosecutions around that time of mothers who experienced the death of two or more of their children. Sally Clark one is the best known of them, and the thing most people remember about it is Roy Meadows' evidence to the court that the chances of two children dying of natural causes or of cot death in a single family were 73 million to 1 against. And this was not only a very dubious calculation, it was also irrelevant. In the Donna Anthony case, which happened at around the same time, Roy Meadow gave a figure of 400,000 to 1, and it's never really been explained why the numbers were so wildly different. In both cases, the mothers were initially convicted, and both were later cleared on appeal. A case not involving Roy Meadow was the prosecution of Lucia de Burke in the Netherlands. This is a case much more similar to Lucy Letby's, where she was accused of murdering 7 patients, and a highly unlikely probability was given in that case as well of 342 million to 1. Again, dubious calculation and irrelevant because it's asking the wrong question, because everything is unlikely if you don't specifically predict it in advance. You can't just stumble on a very specific thing and say that it can't have happened by calculating the odds against it like that, because almost everything specific is very unlikely. The more specific you are, the more unlikely it is. Things that are fairly rare include blue cars, wide front doors, 12-string guitars, but giving probabilities against them is meaningless, however you calculate them. So since the evidence in those cases was discredited, you can see in the Letby case that prosecutors don't give numbers like that anymore. But I think what they're doing is they're effectively trying to launder the 73 million to 1 by disguising it. So instead of giving a number, they just say it's very, very unlikely, or it's very rare, and then they invite the jury to infer a number for themselves, essentially. And I suppose if you don't like giving numbers, that's inevitable to some extent, but that only really addresses the first problem with that, of the dubious calculation, and it doesn't really address the problem with the second part of that it's irrelevant anyway. I think another thing I noticed when Dowie Evans, Sandy Bowen and Marnerides were giving their evidence is they seem to have this technique of avoiding what everybody said would be very damaging for the defence, where if they're telling the truth, they would have to concede that the other side's case was possible. And they've got this quite Weasley technique, I think, of not really denying it, because that would be a lie, but refusing to actually say it. And I suppose you might think that the defence expert, Dr Hall, could have done the same thing. Maybe he feels doing that is beneath him. So, example of that, when Dr Marnerides is being questioned by Ben Myers about Child O, Ben Myers puts it to him that it was possible for the baby's bruising to have been caused by CPR. And what Marnerides does is he says, we're not talking about possibility, we're talking about probability. And he gives a metaphor, again I think here laundering essentially the 73 million to 1 without actually quite saying the number. He gives the metaphor that the probability is the same as a pot falling from a helicopter in the Sahara Desert and hitting a passerby on the head. Now I think, just like the 73 million to 1, the calculation of this is obviously very dubious, and I suppose he'd say it's not meant to be taken literally. but it's not clear at all how he's come to this conclusion or how the probability can be compared to that. I looked up other cases where Dr Marnerides was involved. In most of them, it seems to be cases where he's actually performed the post-mortem. But there is one other case that did strike me, and that's Pembrokeshire County Council and James. It's a civil case brought by a local authority concerning the care of children. And for all I know, the parents may well be guilty in that case, because it concerned puncture wounds to the head, and the parents' explanation was that this might have been caused by the child falling downstairs, which on the face of it seems a bit implausible. What was really interesting to me was when it's put to Marnerides in that case that the child's injuries could have been caused by falling down the stairs, he likened it to the probability of a pot falling from a helicopter in the Sahara Desert and happening to hit a passerby on the head. Now, I suppose it's possible that Marnerides appears in many, many other cases, and perhaps in all those cases he actually works out the probability of his metaphor very carefully and ensures that it does exactly match the probability of what's being discussed. And if that's the case, absolutely fine. Maybe that's what he does.
Sultan! Do you think I am some sort of cretin? Do you think I haven't noticed? It's with whom